Good evening. So, recently I've been reading Acts chapter 7, and I have read it over and over, partly because I was starting the book of Acts and just reading, and I seem to have gotten caught up on chapter 7, partly because every time I read it, I fall asleep, so I don't progress past chapter 7. There is a reason why I would like to study this, and I'll try to bring it up to speed, the context of chapter 7, because it really goes with chapter 6, which deals with Stephen, and it begins chapter 6 by saying, "And in those days when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews." Anyway, they appoint 7 different disciples, and particularly Stephen. And so Stephen actually is performing great wonders and miracles among the people. So Stephen is kind of like a spokesperson, and he starts to get the attention of the local council. And it says in verse 9 in chapter 6, "There arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines, Cyrenians, Alexandrians, and I guess people from Cilicia and of Asia, disputing with Stephen." So I don't know if these are ethnic groups or churches or regions or cities, I don't know. But he's disputing with all of them. And I guess he's full of the Holy Spirit, so he's probably winning the disputes, the arguments, and the main criticism is that he's going against Moses and what Moses has put forth, and they're accusing Stephen of speaking blasphemies against Moses and against God. And so they've brought him to the council, and so now the scribes and the elders have come upon Stephen, and they brought him to the council, which I don't know, I just assume is like maybe a tribunal or a court, something like that, and they've set up false witnesses, furthering this concept that maybe it's a court, something like that. And then at one of the last verses in chapter 6, I'll just read verbatim. "For we have heard him say," they're accusing Stephen, "for we have heard Stephen say that this Jesus of Nazareth shall destroy this place and shall change the customs which Moses delivered us." And all that in the council, looking steadfastly on him, saw his face as it had been the face of an angel. Well, I wanted to summarize, but now it's almost 4 minutes in. Anyway, chapter 7 begins. Maybe I want to timestamp this. Chapter 7 begins. "Then said the high priest, Are these things so?" I guess he's asking Stephen. Okay, quickly, I am going to sort of think on my feet, so to speak, and I will try to study this a little bit out loud, because Stephen starts talking about Abraham. This is really arriving at why I wanted to study this in the first place, because this is the New Testament talking about Abraham. So I'll just read until something interesting comes along, and maybe I'll investigate it or emphasize it. "Then said the high priest, Are these things so? And he said," I believe Stephen said, "Men, brethren, and fathers, hearken. The God of glory appeared unto our father, Abraham, when he was in Mesopotamia, before he dwelt in Charan. I'll just finish this. And said unto him. So I think the God of glory says unto Abraham, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, and come into the land which I shall show thee. Well, I looked up the Russian synodal version, chapter 7, verse 2. It talks about Otsu Nashemu Avraamu. I looked it up in Polish, and it's Naszemu Przodkowi Abrahamowi. Interesting. Przodkowi is forefather. So our forefather, Abrahamowi. Well, I got caught up studying other different things in Russian and Polish. Mesopotamia is generally sort of like the same pronunciation, Mesopotami, something like that. And I went to look up the Greek for a lot of different things, but in particular Mesopotamia. And I thought, well, those are probably that's probably a prefix. Meso or meso is a prefix, and potamia probably means something. And indeed, it's true. I wish I had the screen visible to show this, but I'll just maybe play it into the video. So in Greek, meso means via, almost like the Latin word via, through. Meso translates to via in English, and then potamia in Greek translates into rivers in English. So this Greek word Mesopotamia means via rivers. So it's interesting that Abraham is going, that is, he's in a place called Mesopotamia, which is via rivers, before he dwells in Charan, or Haran. In Russian it says Приезжие переселенцы его в Haran, which in English actually is more like a resettlement before moving him to Haran. Haran. So I forget where I was, but chapter 7, verse 3. And I guess this is the God of glory saying unto Abraham, and it reads verbatim, and said unto him, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, and come into the land which I shall show thee. Then, continuing reading, verse 4, Then came he out of the land of the Chaldeans, and dwelt in Haran. From thence, when his father was dead, he removed him into this land wherein ye now dwell. So just to add some questions that come up. So then came he out of the land of the Chaldeans. Well, from the previous verses, particularly verse 2, Abraham comes out of Mesopotamia into Haran. So, if verse 4 is then saying, then he came out of the land of the Chaldeans, is Mesopotamia the land of the Chaldeans? And there's a question. Hopefully I can leave that in the comment section below as like an open thing to study. Because, I don't know, did Abraham have to go through successive different lands to get from Mesopotamia to Sharon or Haran? If not, then that would make the Chaldeans the residents or the people that live in Mesopotamia. Why is it necessary for Abraham, when his father is dead, to remove him into this land wherein ye now dwell? It's a strange thing. I'm interested to know the names for these, like proper nouns in like the Russian and Polish, for reasons I won't even go into. But Chaldeans, or the land of the Chaldeans, is Ziemli Chaldejskai. Anyway, moving on to verse 5. And he gave him none inheritance in it, no, not so much as to set his foot on, yet he promised that he would give it to him for a possession, and to his seed after him, when as yet he had no child. So Abraham is still, I don't want to say bachelor, but I guess he doesn't have kids yet. And what I understand is that this land of Haran is not inheritance, but it's a possession. So that's an open question. Hopefully I can maybe put that in the comment section below. What is the difference between inheriting something and possessing it? And I'm just saying what I see, so I'll read it again. And he gave him none inheritance in it, no, not so much as to set his foot on. Well, it almost seems like Abraham is not even able to walk on this new land of Haran. He can't even put his foot on it. So he's, not physically inhabiting the land, and yet he has it as a possession, and it's for his seed after him. So if he has children, it's for them. I mean, it could be a little creative, but what I think of is like Abraham's been given a map, a territory, a piece of land, a game board, and he doesn't inhabit it, but he possesses it. I mean, I don't want to be blasphemous or disrespectful, but it almost seems as if Abraham reigns, or is perhaps like godlike in this realm. I don't mean to say things like that. In the Russian, inheritance is naslедство. Okay, so I just read the Russian and the Polish with a few insights I won't go into. In the Polish it says he doesn't get a scrap of land. Ale nie dał mu w posiadanie nawet skrawka tej ziemi. No matter, nieważne. What it seems like is even like trust. The land is being held in trust, like a trust fund for Abraham's children. It doesn't say that, but it seems like something similar. Verse 6, and God spake on this wise, that his seed should sojourn in a strange land, and that they should bring them into bondage, and entreat them evil 400 years. Alright, well, I'm not sure where to start. I looked at the Blue Letter Bible, and the Greek for this verse 6, and it talks about bondage. So what's the word for that? In Greek, it's like doulou or douleia or doulotsatsiv or something. And then couldn't exactly get a good translation of that on Google Translate, so I typed in bondage into English to translate it into Greek. Douleia is the word in Greek for bondage, which kind of seems like the Greek in the Blue Letter Bible. And then I just reversed the search, and douleia actually just translates into work in English. Just looking at the Russian, descendants, or basically Abraham's seed. In the Greek, I think it's sperma. Anyway, in Russian, it's potomki, is descendants. It's potomkovia in Polish, and that's like posterity. Okay, so I'm looking at the Polish for verse 6. Tam staną się niewolnikami. And that's like they will become slaves. Niewolnikami in Polish is slaves. In Russian, it doesn't say they will become slaves, but it says I budut v porabasheni. So they will be in bondage. I pritiestnei liet четыреста. I mean, this is interesting. God is saying to Abraham, this is in my own words, I'm going to take your offspring or children, future generations, put them in a strange land. I'm going to make them work and put them in bondage, make them slaves, and I'm going to entreat them evil for 400 years. It's interesting that in the Greek, the Bible Gateway word for evil is similar to the modern Greek, which is kako, which is evil. So that word is specifically used. But I'll move on to verse 7, reading it verbatim. And the nation to whom they shall be in bondage will I judge, said God. And after that shall they come forth and serve me in this place. Okay, so just to be clear, so the nation that they shall be in bondage will I judge. So, and the nation that Abraham's offspring are in bondage to will be judged. So this other nation, ethnos, is the Greek word. God will judge. Now, this verse is difficult because it's basically two sentences separated by a colon. And I would like to go slow and point out that the first sentence of this verse, and the nation to whom they shall be in bondage. So the subject of this sentence is the nation to whom they'll be in bondage. So it's the ruling nation that's ruling over Abraham's offspring. So this ruling nation is the subject of the first sentence. And I'm pointing that out because the second part of this verse uses pronouns. Specifically, it says they. So it's not being specific in the second sentence. And after that shall they come forth and serve me in this place. So, by my understanding of grammar rules, this second sentence, using the word they, is probably in reference to the subject of the first sentence, which is this ruling nation, which is not Abraham's seed. It's the nation that will rule over him, over Abraham's seed. So, this ruling nation will come forth and serve God in this place. What's this place? I can only assume that this place is this new place, Haran. Now I could have this wrong, because maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. Very possibly I am. And that's very hard to figure out. But if I'm right, it means that this ruling nation, which is going to judge Abraham's offspring, who haven't really been born yet, will come to serve God in this place. What's this place? I think it's Haran. At the moment, I haven't read the Polish or the Russian yet, so I'll do that while I'm not recording. The Russian says that God will Произведу суд. I will make a court. Okay, so in Russian, this ruling nation, after they've enslaved the people of Abraham, they will выйдут и будут служить, come out and serve. Well, the Polish said something a little different for verse 7. And I will just read the Polish verse 7 as it's translated into English on Google Translate. This is God speaking. But I will punish the nation that will enslave them, said God, and eventually my people will abandon him and will serve me in this land. So that's actually saying something a little different. It's not saying that this enslaving people will serve God in this land of Haran. It's saying that eventually Abraham's people, Abraham's offspring, will abandon this enslaving nation and will serve God in this land. And as badly as I can, I'll just read the Polish. Lecz ja ukażę naród, który ich zniewoli, powiedział Bóg. I ostatecznie mój lud go opuści i będzie mi służyć na tej ziemi. Okay, so I'm thinking through this a little bit, and I'm thinking that my original understanding is maybe wrong. Me applying the grammatical rules of the subject of the first sentence, maybe that's wrong. And it does make a little more sense that Abraham's offspring will be enslaved by this enslaving nation, and after they'll come out and reject that maybe and serve God in this new land. I still have to note to self, look at the story of Moses, and because this seems similar, right, like the Exodus story. But continuing reading, verse 8, I'm assuming the he pronoun is God, and he gave him the covenant of circumcision. And so Abraham begat Isaac, and circumcised him the 8th day, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat the 12 patriarchs. So this is interesting. Where do I begin? I guess I'll begin at the top. Alright, so I looked at the Blue Letter Bible to start with, looking to find what the word for covenant was. I guess I'm getting to the circumcision part, but for now, the covenant part is diatheke, and I typed in diatheke into Google Translate, and the English translates as testament. So covenant is, well, in a roundabout way, seems to get translated as testament, but covenant. And circumcision is peritame. Peritame. And the modern Greek, I guess, has a similar word. So it seems like that word is used in the modern sense for the like the foreskin. But I'm not entirely sure that that's the modern meaning is what that actually means. It's interesting because in the Blue Letter Bible, Abraham begot is like ginao, and that translates in the modern Google Translate as to give birth. So that's an interesting question. I mean, Abraham begat them, he ginao them, he gave birth to them. But did he have a wife? And it's not talking about his wife or who his wife was. So how, and I'm serious when I say this, how exactly did Abraham ginao Isaac? And to me, it's a little bit suspicious because, one second. Okay. The Blue Letter Bible isn't word for word translating this verse 7 as it would appear in the KJV. Like, it doesn't say, and Isaac begat Jacob. It doesn't say that. It doesn't use that word begat or ginao. So I'm wondering whether the Blue Letter Bible is actually, I don't know, correct. But the KJV is correct. Okay, so in the Russian it says Idal yamu zaviet обрезание. And idal, dal is the form of the verb, what is it here? Davat, which is to give. Zaviet is covenant or testament. Обрезание is circumcision or clipping. And then it goes on to say, Посем родил он Исаак и обрезал его восьмой день. And then it says, Isaac родил Iakova. And that actually just translates to, and Isaac gave birth to Jacob. So how does that work? Well, I was reading the Russian a bit and trying to get some insight, reading it word for word. I won't go on. So as a study question, maybe I should put below something to further figure out, maybe Bible Gateway search, is who the 12 patriarchs are. 12 patriarchów. And I was reading the Polish, and really I just put the Polish into Google Translate and translate it into English. And it seems like this Polish, maybe Catholic Bible, is tagging on an extra little elaboration at the end, where it says Jacob did the same with the 12 sons. That is, he circumcised them and begat them, gave birth to them. And then it sort of elaborates on the 12 sons, the ancestors of the nation of Israel. Z 12 synami przodkami narodu Izraela. Something like that. Well, I guess that might be true, but that doesn't really appear in the King James Version. I mean, I guess it is true, but it just tags on an extra half a sentence. But maybe that answers my question as to who the 12 patriarchs are. And I guess if I think of Sunday school, I guess I knew that already, maybe. So the next verse is, and the patriarchs, moved with envy, sold Joseph into Egypt, but God was with him. And then it continues on to verse 10, which is almost the same sentence. And delivered him out of all his afflictions, and gave him favor and wisdom in the sight of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and made him the governor over Egypt and all his house. So I'm reading the Blue Letter Bible, and Joseph is, in the Greek, Ioseph, and Egypt is Aegyptos. Okay, in the Russian, sold Joseph to Egypt translates as Продали Иосифа в Египет. Иосифа Египет. In the Polish, it's more detailed, more specific. Sprzedali Józefa w niewolę do Egiptu. So in Russian, Predali. In Polish, Sprzedali. But the Polish is more specific, that Joseph got sold into slavery in Egypt, which is Yevolem. Okay, back to the Greek. It's Pharaoh, Basileus, which is king, Aegyptos. Pharaoh Basileus Aegyptos. And Joseph becomes a governor. In Greek, governor is Hageomai. In Russian, king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, Tsarya Египетского фараона. In Polish, continuing the King James, verse 11, Now there came a dearth over all the land of Egypt, and Canaan or Hanaan, and great affliction, and our fathers found no sustenance. Okay, so starting with the Greek in the Blue Letter Bible, it uses a word limos for dearth. Dearth is limos. Google Translate says limos is famine or starvation. And this is over all the land of Aegyptos and Hanaan. So that's interesting. Question below. I'm trying to remember back to Genesis and Exodus. Egypt and Canaan, are they in proximity to each other? How do those two cities relate to each other? That's a good question for below to research later. In Russian, it seems to be И пришел голод, и великая скорбь. So, голод is hunger, and великая is great, and скорбь is sorrow. Голод и великая скорбь. I'll give the Polish a whiz. Give it a try. Po pewnym czasie w Egipcie I w Kanaanie zapanował straszny głód. Nasi przodkowie nie mieli co jeść. So the Polish is like phrased differently. The words are in a different order. After some time, terrible famines ensued in Egypt and Canaan. Our ancestors had nothing to eat. So, po pewnym czasie is probably after some time. In Egipcie I w Kanaanie, Egypt and Canaan, zapanował straszny głód. Głód is probably hunger, similar to голод in the Russian. So, straszny in Polish and ужасный in Russian. But the Russian synodal version doesn't actually use ужасный. It says И пришел голод. And пришел is like, what does that mean? Came. Anyway, I'm winding it down because it's late here. But I will read verse 12. But when Jacob heard that there was corn in Egypt, he sent out our fathers first. And at verse 13, and at the second time Joseph was made known to his brethren, and Joseph's kindred was made known unto Pharaoh. Then sent Joseph and called his father Jacob to him, and all his kindred 75 souls.